Thanks for showing up for my little talk. Go Gadgets, building gadgets for Atlassian products. As Ken said, I'm Mark Halvorson. I'm the Chief Imagineer at Atlassian. So a lot of people ask me what Imagineer is, and sometimes I wondered that myself. But it's not something we actually made up. It's something that comes from Disney. And at Disney, Imagineers are the people that make the rides. And what Imagineers do is they take things that exist in the physical world, like wheels and steel, and they piece those things together in new and interesting ways to make something different, something more fun, like a roller coaster. And that's basically what I try to do with technology. I look at things that we have in-house, things that are happening in enterprises, things that are happening on the social web, things like that. I try to bring those things together in new and interesting ways. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, is the bringing together of Atlassian and OpenSocial, and more specifically, gadgets. So I broke my talk down into three main areas. What is OpenSocial? How we ended up choosing it for Atlassian's products to work together, and then finally why you should use it as well when you're writing customizations that integrate into Atlassian. So I'll jump right in. So what is OpenSocial? OpenSocial is basically made up of three main areas. There's a social data model, which is a representation of what a user is or a person is, who they are, what their name is, what they like, things like that. If you're from an enterprise, it's the same sort of information that might be in an LDAP system, and it's just a repository or place to keep that. Next, there's a set of web service APIs, which is a way to get at that information between applications. So there's nice methods to call in and figure out what the name is or phone number or things like that. And then third is gadgets, which is what I'm going to focus the rest of this talk on. Gadgets are basically a componentized, a standard way of writing UI elements that work with backend applications. So to figure out why we chose OpenSocial, I'll take it back a little bit in history as to what problem we were trying to solve with it. So back before we started using OpenSocial, all of our products were siloed. So you had to log into Fisheye to check your source code, log into JIRA to see your issues, log into Confluence to see the wiki. And basically, you had to do things in all the applications separately. And that was bad. So Atlassian, as a company, have a strong emphasis on teams and projects and tasks over tools. So each one of our products, independently of each other one, was creating a dashboard. So they were trying to create a holistic way to get an overview of what's going on in your project. We don't prescribe which applications of ours to use, so each one kind of was replicating information in different ways. So some were using portlet technology, some were using some like proprietary technology that wasn't extensible. It was basically a hodgepodge of different dashboards, and it didn't solve the problem at all that we were trying to tackle. Each product was trying to pull in information from other products, so whether it be Bamboo builds or JIRA tickets or information from Confluence, but we were trying to share information amongst our products, and we weren't doing it in an effective manner. And it wasn't just our own products. We were also trying to pull in information from external systems as well, things like Salesforce.com or Oracle or Microsoft. Basically, we were looking for a standard way for all our applications to work together, but also seamlessly tie into an enterprise. And that's when we came across OpenSocial gadgets. And as it turns out, gadgets are a great solution for dashboards, as witnessed by iGoogle, for example, which is a dashboard that a lot of people use, and it's actually based on OpenSocial technology. So after we implemented OpenSocial, now all of our products can talk to each other in a standardized way. So Fisheye can produce gadgets, Confluence can produce gadgets, and you can place them on a dashboard or even just embed them directly in a Confluence wiki page, which is something that I'm very excited about. I'm going to show a little bit later. And it's not just our own containers. It also can work outside and external containers as well. So things like Gmail, if you're a manager and you're trying to get project status out of JIRA, you can place gadgets in your email inbox as well. So because we're using a standard method of integration, it can work across the web. There's a lot of broad industry support behind OpenSocial. Big companies that you've probably heard of, like LinkedIn, Salesforce, Google, they're all behind this technology, so it's likely to be a technology that's going to be around for a while to come. So why write gadgets? Well, number one, they're really, really easy. I'm going to walk through some examples here. But they basically use the lowest level web technologies, so HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. Anybody can write a gadget, and it's very, very simple. The last point on here, write once, display everywhere. I hesitated to put it on there because we've all been burned by that in the past. But because it's using these low-level technologies and it is rendered in a browser, there's a higher chance of probability that you can write once and run anywhere. At least that's what the promise is. So here is the obligatory hello world example for what a gadget looks like. So it's an XML file that contains everything that's displayed in the gadget. So in this case, there's 9 lines of code here. And in the center, there's that C data section, which is basically the HTML that's wrapped up in a C data and displayed. So if I look at what this looks like in a dashboard, it just displays hello world. So very, very simple. So if you're doing like an announcement sort of gadget or something like that, it really is that simple to write something, get it published, and share it out to the world. But hello world's not that interesting. So the anatomy of a gadget is basically made up of 3 different things. There's the XML specification file, which is what we just looked at, which hello world was in. There's a core set of JavaScript APIs. So this is how you're going to access preferences, make requests to backend systems, things like that. And then there's a set of gadget features. A lot of these are optional, so you can turn off and on gadget features, so things like mini messages. And I'll show examples of these in coming up slides. But digging a little deeper inside the spec file, there's basically 3 main sections in here. At the top, there is a module prefs section, which is where there's metadata about the gadget. So who wrote the gadget? What is a thumbnail of it? What's a screenshot look like? Where do you get support? All that sort of meta information about the gadgets at the top of the file in this module pref section. How this is surfaced to the end users is actually in the gadget directory. So when a user is picking what gadgets to place on their dashboard or place in a wiki page, they're given this little blurb about what the gadget is, how it works, who wrote it. So they're a little bit more informed about what they're placing on their dashboard. The next section is the user pref section. So the user pref section is a place where you can define the simplistic type of preferences, so integers, strings, booleans, things like that. And just by declaring these inside your XML spec file, the container creates the UI for you. So in this case, we have show date, show summary, and number of entries. And how that's surfaced to the end user, when they click edit to edit their preferences, they're presented with a checkbox, and an input box. So what we found at Atlassian is that these work great for kind of the simplistic style of preferences, like how many items to display in a page, things like that. But if you want anything dynamic, they don't actually work very well. So in a lot of our products, we've actually written another view, which is a preferences view, because we want to like load a dynamic list of project names and things like that. So don't be surprised if when you're writing gadgets, you have to go beyond kind of the preferences that are there. But for simple things, it works great. Next is the content section. So this is where you're going to put in any CSS, JavaScript, HTML that you want to have displayed. In this case, there's just a link off to a CSS file, a link off to a JavaScript file. The JavaScript file actually does the processing, and then it's dumped into this div. So basically using DOM manipulation and AJAX requests, it changes what the gadget looks like. Each gadget can have multiple different views. So what we're looking at here is the default view. So in the default view, it's a box. It has columns and rows here that display information. There's kind of the Chrome around it where you can minimize and maximize, click the edit button, drag and drop, all that stuff that's built into the dashboard. But the default view is kind of what it defaults to if it doesn't find another view. So here we're looking at the pie chart gadget here in default view. And you can actually jump to a canvas view from that gadget where it has a slightly different display. So it displays the pie chart. The pie chart actually grows based upon how much real estate it has. And it displays a table next to it. So if you're in canvas view, you can display more information because you have more real estate to play with. You can actually jump from these views programmatically as well, which I'll show in another example. So another view that's predefined is the nav view. And nav view is what's used in Gmail. So this is a tiny, tiny window. So in this case, the same assigned to me gadget we saw earlier just has fewer columns and it's smaller. And actually in this gadget, what I did is when you click one of the rows, it actually launches you into canvas view in Gmail, which means it takes over the center console in Gmail and actually displays the item that you clicked on. So you can programmatically jump from nav view to canvas view and back again. So it's kind of a nice way to create interaction. And then one of the things Mike showed this morning in the keynote was the wallboard view, which is just another view into a gadget. So the way it's surfaced in JIRA is as a plugin. There's a wallboard view for a dashboard. And inside the XML spec file, you'll see that we have the default view defined here and the wallboard view defined there. And that's basically just different HTML based upon which view it's handed. And when you go to the wallboard view, it displays with the black background, larger fonts, etc. Finally, inside the spec file is some JavaScript stuff. And the reason I show this is because this is some of the optional things that you can turn off and on. So in this case, the second line here, we're creating a mini message that says loading. So as the gadget is loading, it displays the text loading. Brilliant. So the way that looks in the UI is it actually drops down a little window at the top of the window that says loading. And when you want the mini message dismissed, you dismiss it, and it shrinks up again. So that leads to requesting data from backend systems. So the way you make gadgets interactive is to basically use AJAX requests to the backend system and manipulate the DOM in order to display elements that you're wanting to. So one of the things that's built directly into the OpenSocial specification is OAuth. And OAuth could have an entire talk on its own, but I'll summarize it as just API level authentication. So you can actually give permission to one application to do only certain actions in the backend application. It's really nice in OpenSocial. Gadgets, you basically just put 3 lines of XML into your spec file, and the container takes care of all of the complexity of OAuth. And then third, there's a request proxy. So this is one of the more complex concepts to get your head around when you're talking about gadgets. So we'll talk about that now. There are 3 main elements in the gadget to render a gadget. So the browser is what the user is looking at. There's a container, which is what does the rendering, and then the backend server, which is the application you're trying to talk to. So in this case, the container might be JIRA, and the backend system might be Confluence. Or the container might be iGoogle, and the backend system might be JIRA. You can mix and match. When a user requests a dashboard, the request goes to the OpenSocial container, which figures out which gadgets are going to be on the page. And then it calls to the backend systems to get the spec files that it's going to load. It processes that spec file and sends it back to the user. So in the browser, each gadget is rendered inside of an iframe, which means that a subsequent request goes from the gadget to the backend or to the container, where it processes the HTML and brings it back into the browser. Subsequent requests have to go through the container to the backend system in order for them to be secure. So there's automatic rewriting of URLs that happens. You don't have to do anything to make it work. But basically, if you're requesting data on the backend system, it's going to go through the container to the backend system and then come back again. And all that happens through this magic method called gadgets.io.makeRequest. So what can you do with this API? You can call any URL on the backend system. Typically, XML or JSON are the most useful because that allows you to process the data. So here's an example fetching issues using the JIRA XML API. So it assembles inside a function here a URL that's going to get JIRA issues back from a JIRA server. And it calls the gadgets.io.makeRequest function, which goes, requests it, comes back. There's a handle response function, which processes the XML coming back from JIRA. And then it inserts the rows into the gadget, and it looks a little something like this. So not very complex to write something like this, 20 or so lines of JavaScript, and you're off and running. So how about a real-world example? So this is actually something that I did right around the 4.0 launch timeframe. And one of the product marketing managers came and said that we have this great website here at Atlassian, and we want to share the content on our website with the world. But the problem is that typically, in our case, a few system administrators visit our website, and then they install a product, and then they send the URL to their end users, and then their end users start using the product, but they have no idea what Atlassian is or what we do. Since we're a development-focused company, those are actually people that we're interested in reaching out to, because we actually have a lot to say to developers. So we were looking for a way to get content from our website actually onto JIRA and Confluence instances so that the end users could learn more about Atlassian. So we already had on our website kind of this news and events section right on the homepage. And that was essentially what we wanted to surface for all the end users. So we wanted to repurpose this code that was already sitting on our web server. And so we did this very easily using a gadget where we simply wrote a small JSP page that pulls in the same news and events that's on the homepage, along with some ads here. And end users can choose to put this on their dashboard. I also added preferences to show and hide the ads or show and hide events. So basically, the user can select what they're most interested in learning about. Since we launched this, we're getting about 1,000 page views a day, which I think is pretty interesting because you actually have to choose to put on your dashboard. So people are actually using it, which is great. But let's take a step back. Let's think a little bit higher level here about why you might want to write gadgets. So what's the purpose of writing an application? The purpose of writing an application is to do something or complete some process. And the core elements of any application are three things: the context in which you're working, the content that you're making decisions around, and the actions you can take based upon that content. So if you take an example like Gmail, for example, here, it's a great web application where your context is communication, your content is your email and your contacts, and the actions you can take are to read, write, and reply. So that's great. It's all self-contained in one nice application. But when you're thinking about gadgets, they're basically written for the same reason. It's to do something or complete some process. But there's two different ways to think about gadgets. One is as a mini application where everything comes from within inside the gadget. And then the second way to think about it is as an atomic unit of work, where it basically contributes to the context in which it's placed. And this is kind of fun when you're designing applications to think about it this way. So here's an example of a mini application gadget for JIRA. So in this mini application, you have to enter an issue key and a comment and click submit. And it actually talks to JIRA and attaches this comment to that JIRA issue. So in this case, it's a mini application because everything comes from inside the gadget itself. And typically for end users, that's not a great use case or usability, method of usability. So a better way to think about a gadget like this might be as a unit of work. So here we are on a Confluence page talking about a specific issue, and we have the ability to comment on that issue in JIRA directly. So in this case, it's pulling the context from the context in which it's placed, which is around that specific issue. So in this case, the user doesn't actually have to type in the JIRA key. They just type in the comment and click submit, and it's attached. So what I've learned over time, I've been doing portals for years and years, is that when you think about gadgets as units of work, they are easier to write and easier to reuse. So I always try to think about how I can break kind of functionality down into smallest units of work when I'm building stuff. And I'll show an example of doing that shortly. So when you start placing all these gadgets together, that's when you're starting to create composite applications. So you might get the context from the container, and you might get context, content, and actions from 3 different gadgets on the same page. And it gets kind of fun to design applications this way. So taking a look back at Gmail, when they first released, they didn't have chat integrated. But when they inserted this little chat window here, the application just got a lot more useful just by inserting this small bit of functionality into it. So now you suddenly have presence information. You can instant message people, things like that. So now for a demo. So I'm actually demoing a project I did for FedEx Day. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with what FedEx Day is. Does everybody know what that is? No. So FedEx Day is something that Atlassian does where you're given 24 hours to ship software. And basically, you can do anything you want, totally up to you as far as what you want to develop. It's a competition, so you have to write a shipment order, much like a FedEx delivery, and then when you're done, you write a delivery order, which describes what you did over that 24-hour period. And we're all competing for a traveling trophy that goes around. And it's actually a really fun 24 hours, unless you're competing, in which case you're awake for 24 hours straight, and it's not that fun. But this is something I did for FedEx 13, which is actually won that FedEx, which is kind of cool. but I titled it Flapjack for Confluence, and I'll show why shortly. But when I was approaching that FedEx day, I was taking a look at Episodic, which is a program I use quite a bit. And in Episodic, there's this feedback tab, which is for Git satisfaction. And if you were at the keynote this morning, you saw the CEO of Git satisfaction, which was kind of cool. But when you click on that feedback tab, it actually brings up a window where you can enter a problem, report a problem, and also find existing problems. And I was looking at this and thinking that those looked a lot like gadgets. And I was thinking how JIRA allows you to file issues and search for issues and things like that. So why couldn't we write Git satisfaction that's powered by JIRA? So what I did was I created a Confluence page, and I placed on that page 2 gadgets, one for creating or reporting an issue, and one for searching for issues. So I wrote 2 very simple gadgets. It didn't take very long to write those at all. And then I used some CSS wizardry to hide all of the Chrome for Confluence. And basically all that was left on the page was the gadgets themselves. And then I used some JavaScript to actually load in a flap, which is why I gave it the name Flapjack, just that content from those gadgets. So now these 2 gadgets working together basically replicated the same functionality that was in Git satisfaction with JIRA as the backend, which is kind of cool. So there we go, 2 gadgets. So here's a little demo of those working together. So here I am navigating in Confluence as the administrator, and I'm here wondering how I change my picture. And it wasn't really clear to me how to change the picture, so I wanted to give that feedback. So I went and I clicked on the feedback tab, and I wanted to say, how do I change my, oh, and then I see someone's already reported this problem. So I go down and I click on that issue, and I can see that someone has commented on how to change my picture. So I go back to Confluence, and I follow the instructions. So I click on it, I change my picture to one that looks like me, click set, and there we go. So as I'm looking at this list of icons here, I notice there's only one female icon, which I think is bad. So I wanted to actually go give that feedback to users. So there's one female. I guess the ghost could be female, but there's only one. So I go back over and I click on the feedback tab. The gadgets are loaded again, and I say an improvement might be that there should be more female icons on this dialog. And I click add. It goes off and it files the issue in JIRA. And as a user, I can just go close the flap and go about my business and just go back to navigating on the dashboard. So there we go. That's Flapjack for Confluence. And how this works is actually just a simple JavaScript insertion. So at the top of the Confluence page, I simply insert one line of HTML. That JavaScript file then loads all the subsequent HTML and CSS for kind of the Flapjack project. And then I added one div there, which tells Flapjack which HTML page or which Confluence page to load. And that's how Flapjack worked.
How do you know what JIRA project to land on?
So that was configured as a preference to the gadget. Yeah.
So you gave a specific JIRA project?
Correct. Yeah.
Sorry, you didn't do that.
That's all right. That's fine. So because it's kind of lightweight and just JavaScript, it doesn't have to work just inside Confluence. It could work on any website. So here, for example, I embedded Flapjack inside of Atlassian.com. So here I am navigating around, and I see, I don't know where Fisheye is. I see DevTools and Confluence and JIRA, but I don't see Fisheye. So I want to give that feedback. So I click on the feedback tab, and I say, where is Fisheye? And I see someone's reported that before, so I just click on it. I see someone commented, look under DevTools. So I go back, click on DevTools, and there's Fisheye. So just for fun, I put it inside Facebook as well, which is where I spend a lot of my time. So if I'm browsing on Facebook, I might want to give them some feedback. So I go click on the feedback tab, and I say, an improvement would be, give us better privacy controls. And I close the feedback tab and go about my business. So there we go. That's Flapjack running across 3 different things. And basically, that application was just bringing together a couple simple gadgets in kind of a new and interesting way and creating a new application out of an existing application. So in summary, why write gadgets? Number one, they're easy. It's just simple web technologies. Anybody can write them. If you're trying to pull in some new content from an existing system, there's no easier way to get it into Confluence or JIRA. Confluence being able to place gadgets just on any page is really exciting because you're not limited by the constraints of a dashboard. You can now place these things together and lay them out however you want, and that's the easiest way to make composite applications that I know of. They're reusable, so whether you're using it in an Atlassian container, in JIRA or Confluence, or another container you have running, like Jive or iGoogle or whatever you want, because it's standardized, they're reusable. And third is fun. I think it's fun to think about applications in kind of an object-oriented UI sort of way, where you're breaking things down, you're writing really simple pieces of functionality and then placing them together to make it do something fun. So that's it. If you have any questions, and I put some resources up there. We have Atlassian.com/OpenSocial, which has some nice videos and demos of what we're doing with OpenSocial, and then OpenSocial.org as well.
So I've written some gadgets myself, but I had to install Shindig locally in order to have a development environment. Are you guys looking at maybe writing a smallish OpenSocial container?
So we are not, but you can just install JIRA if you want. We're actually, one of the things that we were just at Google I/O a few weeks ago and talking with a bunch of people about OpenSocial. And that's actually what a lot of people are doing for the development, is just installing a developer license of JIRA and using that as a test engine. It was also kind of cool. We're one of the only companies that has production gadgets running out there in the enterprise. So in the pods, like the demo pods, if you looked over, JIRA was on almost everybody's dashboard, which was kind of cool. So everybody else was demoing our stuff. So, yeah.
Questions? We'll go left to right. We got plenty of time.
Can you leverage some of the Confluence functionality in an OpenSocial gadget, like maybe the charting or the graphing? I mean, they seem, having that container, it seems to be kind of sandboxed out.
Well, so one of the things they showed today was the Confluence page gadget, which lets you pull in just content that's on a page. So if you have a page that has charts or graphs on it, you can leverage or surface that in different containers. Is that what you're thinking?
More like bringing in external content into Confluence pages, like to make kind of a performance dashboard. So you're maybe pulling data in from an external application that's monitoring performance and having it delivered in Confluence.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. All you do is drop the gadget tag inside your wiki markup. There's actually a dialog right on the rich text editor as well, where you click it and it brings up and you can configure the gadget and just embed it in any page. So, yeah.
I've written a few gadgets now for JIRA, and I have so many questions I could probably spend the next hour, but the biggest question I have is the documentation about JIRA's JavaScript backend that you can access. Where are you all at in the maturity of that? Where are you at in the development of that JavaScript framework? Do you guys consider yourself done? Is it going to change next month?
It's definitely a work in progress. They put together kind of I guess, ad hoc sort of APIs they needed as they were writing gadgets for themselves. But there's definitely an initiative to get that more formalized, and then the documentation will follow. We recently had a doc sprint where we sat down and tried to kind of pinpoint some of the areas where documentation needed to be improved.
I would take issue with the easy point about the JIRA gadgets.
Yeah, right.
And also, before with Confluence, if you're using JIRA 3, then you used like the JIRA portlets macro to pull in portlets into Confluence. And now I assume that's, we're going to use gadgets for that.
Right.
We have, I don't know how many pages, it's 10,000 pages or something with, some 5% of them, 10% of them have portlet macro calls in them.
Okay.
Is there some way to convert all those? Is there a script that you guys have developed? I haven't discovered it yet.
Do you know that, Ken?
I don't think we have anything auto-matchable. There's no like instant conversion thing. There are some documentation, I think, on converting plugin or portlets to gadgets, but
There is or there isn't?
I think that there is. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that it's been talked about. So I can contact me afterwards, and I'll give you a contact to follow up. So I'm going to do a couple more questions, and then we'll come back to you since I know you have plenty more. There's a couple over here.
Have you got any recommendations on editing the gadgets? Because they can get pretty ugly. And I know I've heard things about, breaking it down and including your files separately, but it doesn't seem like the Atlassian have followed that. Sort of some of the gadgets are quite large.
Yeah, right. They get really, really large. Have you played with the OpenSocial development environment? There's a plugin to Eclipse for.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
There's a OSDE. Just Google that, and it's a plugin to Eclipse that basically breaks up the file for you, so you can click on the content tab.
Is that only Eclipse? What about IntelliJ?
I don't know about IntelliJ.
Okay.
I think it's only Eclipse.
Any other questions? I know we got more over here. So I think we got. Make sure we got time. Yeah, we got a few more minutes before the end. So if you want to ask maybe a couple more questions. Oh, you got one over here.
I've heard the phrase self-inflicted cross-site scripting attack used in reference to the idea of gadgets. I don't know, is there anything specific about OpenSocial and containers that alleviates that consideration, or?
So the way gadgets work is they're all run inside iframes. So the way iGoogle does it, and they've taken, because they're a large consumer site, they've taken all that into consideration, but basically everything's boxed into a window, which means it cannot interact with the page itself or the container itself. And then all the requests for content go through this proxy, so it is, in theory, secure. Yeah, though.
That sounded like a really good caveat.
Well, I guess, like, if you think about Facebook's new Graph API, like how secure is that? You're basically, anytime you put that on your page, you're
Kind of hard to hear you.
oh, sorry. I apologize. So it is definitely something that is being taken into consideration. So I sit on the Enterprise OpenSocial working group, and so the Enterprise OpenSocial working group is a bunch of enterprises that are getting together and trying to improve the specification and make it enterprise ready. And security is one of the top concerns there. So, yeah.
So going back to your example about the different views, is there any way to not having to redo your code and actually kind of take an OO approach to those and abstract out and all of that stuff and cascade down? So I only have to define my CSS once.
Yeah, well, you just externalize the CSS into a file and then include it.
Okay, but then I have to include it twice still.
Yeah,
okay.
Correct. It's included twice, but it will only be loaded once based upon which view is being loaded.
What's the best source for seeking help on things that don't seem to be working right, or is it through filing a JIRA ticket, a JIRA issue, or emailing developer relations, or emailing you directly?
Any of those, yeah. The forums as well are not helping. Yeah, just email me directly, and Halvorson@Atlassian.com.
Any final ones? Okay, so we have a break now. So.